On today's show, the Capitals fall to Utah in the shootout, but the good news is they get a much needed break during the Four Nations face-off.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals as we talk about the Capitals as they fall in the shootout to the Utah Hockey Club. It's interesting, you take a look at Utah, of course, who used to be the Coyotes, and they really took it to the Capitals right out of the gate, putting up 2 goals in the first 2 minutes of the game, 3 goals in the first period of the game. It definitely was a game that I think kind of caught the Capitals by surprise. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about the Capitals getting a much-needed break during the Four Nations face-off. Not really intended that way, as there were some players that rightfully should have been in the Four Nations face-off, but I'm going to look at this as a glass half full and say this team is going to be well rested and ready to take on the remainder of the season. I'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about Alex Ovechkin as he continues his breakout season. And in the game against Utah as well, putting up 3 points, and the good times just keep rolling for the grade 8. But just to get it going here, talking about the game today, of course, not the outcome that we were looking for. They ended up picking a point, so it's not a total loss as they fall 5-4 in the shootout. And like I referenced off the top of the show, they really took it to the Capitals in a hurry. And I'm going to be honest with you, very surprised. Why am I surprised? Well, Logan Thompson was in net, and for him to give up 2 goals in the first 2 minutes of the game, well, that is pretty surprising. So I think the big thing to realize is that Utah hockey team is actually pretty good. And I know they're trying to rebrand it as this inaugural season, but we know who they are. Go ahead and take off their mask. Oh, it's the Coyotes, who sometimes have had the Capitals numbers here in recent years. But in any event, the Capitals, I think, were maybe had their eyes and their thoughts set on already what they're going to be doing on the beach that they're going to be on or wherever they're going to have their feet kicked up on. It really did seem that the Capitals were caught by surprise. But all things considered, really good pushback in this game in the third period. I thought to myself, well, the Capitals, this is not going to be the game for them. They did have some pushback. They tied the game. It made it to the shootout. So again, it wasn't the desired result that we were looking for, but kind of a statement about this team this year is that they do have the pushback even when they are down by a deficit, even later in the game. But let's do that. Let's dive into the action from today's game against the Utah Hockey Club. And the one thing I'm going to like after this season is they're going to have a name. Now, there's been a lot of different names floated out there. Kind of reminds me of Washington when they didn't have a name for their football team for a while there, that the Utah Hockey Club. And for a while, they were actually kicking around the idea of calling themselves, just keeping the name the Utah Hockey Club. In any event, I think it will be a good thing for them to have a true identity instead of UHC, which sounds kind of collegiate if you ask me. But it was, at the end of the day, a thrilling match that kept us on the edge of our seats. Of course, it made it all the way to the shootout. You take a look at it, Tom Wilson was huge in this game. And what was the secret sauce for the Capitals in this game? Setting up at the net front. It has been true all season long. Hang out in front of the net. Good things will happen. I'm talking about the Wilson goal. I'm talking about the Pierre-Luc Dubois goal. Those kind of things that if you hang out up front, good things happen. But you take a look at the Capitals, they are playing really well right now. If you didn't know, ultimately extending the Caps' home point streak to 15 games. The Capitals definitely firing on all cylinders. And of course, something that I like to do here is to take a look at the standings as well. And well, the Caps, as of right now, have 80 points, the most points in the Eastern Conference. Only the Winnipeg Jets in the Western Conference have 81 points. So as we head into this break, I'm feeling confident. They did pick up the point. I think it would have been kind of a sour note had they not accumulated any points. But in any event, a great game in a way for the Capitals. Again, I wish that they would have not let UHC into the game to start the game, but they found the way to clamp down, tighten things up, and ultimately pick up a point. Listen, that's where we're at right now. But we take a look at it. The only record left to chase is that 17-game streak from the 2016-2017 season, and we are hungry for that. But let's talk about the stars of the game. Tom Wilson has been pouring it on as of late. Tom Wilson stole the spotlight with 2 goals in this game, while Captain Alex Ovechkin contributed 3 assists. That's right, it is the assist hat trick for the Great Eight. So he did not find the back of the net in this game, but he was contributing to this game. Tom Wilson, like I say on the show, if you're an everydayer, oftentimes he gets lumped into that category that he's just this goon, this tough guy. This guy's putting up big numbers for the Capitals. And like I've talked about, many people have talked about the future captain of this team. And it's great to see Ovechkin, Tom Wilson working well together. And Ovi, all things considered, didn't find the back of the net, but 3 assists. Ovi is on fire. And with those 3 assists in the game, he extended his point streak to 5 games and moved past Phil Esposito into 11th on the NHL's all-time points list. Huge milestone for Alex Ovechkin. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth about Ovi in the 3rd segment. But, he is, like I've talked about, it's all the milestones that he's knocking out between here and Gretzky, that when he finally wraps up his career, it's not just going to be Gretzky. It's not going to be just that, he won a Stanley Cup. It's everything that he knocked out in between. But it wasn't just those 2 players in the game. Dylan Strome also showed up big, extending his point streak to 6 games with a goal and an assist. Dylan Strome, the ultimate competitor. If he doesn't play well, all about it. He's banging his stick. He's slamming the door shut. A guy that the Capitals picked up off the scrap heap from the Blackhawks, a huge addition. But in this game, as well as it was a great shout out to John Carlson, who received recognition before the game for reaching 700 career points. Good tip of the hat to number 74, John Carlson, who continues to be lights out for the Capitals, a guy that routinely plays 25, 30 minutes a night, even though that wasn't supposed to be the plan this season, that we acquired players in the offseason so he wouldn't have to, still putting up big minutes, and just an acknowledgement for a job well done. 700 career points. So let's take a look at the overview of the game. The game started on a rough note, like I talked about off the top. Being down by 2, the Caps fell behind 2-0, thanks to goals by Josh Doan and Michael Carcone of Utah. But the difference is not counting the Capitals out. Wilson got things rolling on the PP to make it 2-1, even though Utah quickly struck back from a goal from, Jack McBain. Yeah, that Jack McBain that took Alex Ovechkin out to extend their lead to 3-1. But the Capitals, they fought hard. Pierre-Luc Dubois scored another power play goal, leaving us trailing by just 1 at the end of the first period. And what do we know about Pierre-Luc Dubois? Started the season just kind of chipping in on the assist department. Now he is finding the back of the net with regularity. Things got a bit dicey in the second period when Dylan got their score to make it 4-2 for Utah. It was an interesting game in the regard that I thought the Capitals were in it. They were in it. They were in it. But then Utah would vacuum a lot of the momentum out of the room. That's when Spencer Carberry did what he does well and has done things throughout the season, is moving Ethan Frank up to play with Ovechkin and Strome. And it paid off. And how did it pay off? Strome found the back of the net to make it 4-3, keeping the Capitals in the game. And it's interesting. You take a look at what Ethan Frank has accomplished since getting called up. That I think it was a trial. I mean, we remember what Ethan Frank did in camp in the preseason and all of that. That he didn't really pop off the page. And Spencer Carberry said, these are the things that you need to work on. He went down to Hershey, didn't sulk, didn't moan, went to work, addressed those things, fixed those things, and has been a key addition to this team. And I like the chemistry there with Ethan Frank, Ovi, and Strome likes it as well as he scored. But you take a look at it, a dramatic finish to the game. The game ended up being tied, and it went to overtime and subsequently the shootout. Wilson tallied his second goal of the game, tying it 4-4 with just $1:31 left in regulation. This marked a career high for Wilson, as he has hit 24 goals this season, matching his record from the 21-22 season. So Wilson catching his stride at just the right time. The engine is firing on all cylinders. Talk about a comeback for the comeback kids. The Capitals, unfortunately, though, the shootout wasn't too kind to us this time. Dubois, Protas, and Strome all couldn't find the back of the net, and Utah's Nick Schmaltz sealed the victory with the shootout winner. Again, so it didn't quite go the way that we had hoped for, but they picked up a point. I'm choosing to look at this game as a glass half full. All in all, while the Capitals showed incredible resilience in battling back from that early deficit, this game also highlighted some ongoing struggles, particularly on the shootout. Something that I don't think the Capitals have prepared for too much. I know this is something that has been the case for them earlier in the season when they made it to the shootout, that I think that they need to have, more of a shootout specialist, kind of like they did with TJ Oshie and Evgeny Kuznetsov. I don't know if they necessarily have one in house, but listen, at the end of the day, Capitals, it shouldn't have to make it to the shootout anyway. If you won a game in regulation, or if you won it in overtime, you wouldn't need it. And I understand that you do need it, but in any event, something that maybe the Capitals can work on for the remainder of the season. All right, so coming up here after the break, that despite the fact that the Capitals have 0 players headed to the Four Nations face-off, yes, many qualified players that probably should be there, the Capitals are going to have a luxury, and that is take some much-needed rest. I'll break it all down straight ahead. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. So listen, the basketball season is going. Some crazy moves around the NBA, and maybe your team's in it, maybe it's not. Why don't you open up the FanDuel app and put a little bit of money on the game, and all of a sudden, all of those NBA games got that much more exciting. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So the final game was today before the Capitals take a much-needed break going into the Four Nations face-off festivities. If you're asking me, I will not watch a single game I think that this whole thing has lost a tremendous amount of credibility, and I'm looking squarely at Logan Thompson. Why he didn't make it in when he's second in voting for the Vezina. There is no justice in the NHL, is there really? When it comes down to it, Peter DeBoer didn't want him in there. Cassidy didn't want him in there because of his history with the Golden Knights. Again, if it comes on, I'm going to turn it on to something else, or I'm going to turn it off. I just think it is horrible, but if you guys want to watch it, go ahead and watch it. I'm soured to the whole thing, if you ask me. But a much-needed break for a Capitals team that is sitting on top of the world right now. One of the things that Spencer Carberry had mentioned is that even though Ovechkin is in, even though he's accomplishing great things, he's not 100% in where he needs to be right now. So I think that this will be a much-needed break for him, but also players that are kind of on the outside, Sonny Milano, whatever's going on there, maybe he'll be good to go, even though I don't really want him in the lineup. What are we going to pull Ethan Franco to put him in there? In any event, this is a good opportunity for guys to get a break before the final push to the end of the season. Big milestones coming up, the trade deadline in March, and then it's full go. And, the thing of it is the Capitals need to be rested. They need to be prepared for the remainder of the season. So, in a lot of ways, I think that this is a good thing. Now, as the NHL gears up for a highly anticipated Four Nations face-off, we've got some interesting updates on our Capitals. Now, only 2 NHL teams are without players representing their nation. That is, well, you guessed it, the Capitals and the San Jose Sharks. And now while the Sharks are sitting at the bottom of the standings, it's quite different for the Capitals, are riding high at the top of the Eastern Conference right now, just right behind the Winnipeg Jets before their crucial game takes place, which took place today. Ultimately, we know how that whole thing played out. But you take a look at it, the Capitals sit atop of the Eastern Conference, the Metro Division, and it's a whole lot different for the San Jose Sharks. Now, the disappointing thing, of course, is the players that deserved to be in this whole thing. I'm talking about Logan Thompson, those kind of players that statistically they did what they needed to do to qualify. And it's been clear since early December that none of the Caps were going to be selected for the tournament, despite a series of injuries that brought in several replacements. And at the end of the day, Logan Thompson talked about it. He said, nope, and was never contacted. And he said that he doesn't really care. And I'm glad he has that attitude. Don't really buy that he doesn't care, but he was not contacted to play. Defenseman John Carlson has shared his disappointment about not having any players make the cut, expressing that plenty of his teammates, including himself, would have loved the chance to showcase their skills on the international level. Notable candidates that I talked about, of course, Carlson, goaltender Logan Thompson, and Tom Wilson were all strong candidates. It's surprising they didn't make the roster. Now, I was able to jump into a conspiratorial rabbit hole, not even too conspiratorial, about Logan Thompson. I don't understand about Tom Wilson. Really don't, unless it's his history as being a tough guy. Maybe he's ruffled the feathers of one of the decision makers in the whole process. But John Carlson, that doesn't make any sense to me at all, as he is not a verbose. He's not an over-the-top guy. He's just a guy that goes out and executes the plays, and it's just a great defenseman, can score goals, those kind of things. So I guess if I had to draw conclusions, I can do that for Logan Thompson and Tom Wilson. But John Carlson, that is a bit of a head scratcher. Now, Thompson remarked that while he would have felt more let down if he was considered and then cut, he's actually okay with not being in the mix. And I think that's the right attitude. I'm sure at this point, he has carried a bulk of the load for the Capitals in the net that he could probably use some time. It was a tough game today, Sunday, against UHC that saw him put to the test, I think almost in a lot of ways more than any other game this season. I mean, giving up 2 goals in the first 2 minutes and 3 in the first period, that is definitely not characteristic of LT, but a much needed break. On the bright side, this team gets a nice 9-day break to rest, recover with no players heading to the tournament. And the one thing I know about Alex Ovechkin is that he is going to be staying stateside. There is no plans for him to go over to Dubai. His agent had said that he potentially might go to Miami, as him and his family have an apartment in Miami. An apartment. That's an interesting thing to call it. I'm guessing it's probably a studio apartment for Alex Ovechkin in Miami. I'm kidding, of course. But in any event, Alex Ovechkin will be stateside, getting in some much needed rest and ultimately ready to go for the remainder of the season. What do we remember about Ovi last season? Got off to his slowest start in the goal scoring department during the All-Star break, went to Dubai with his family, rode around a camel, came back a changed man. He doesn't need the camel this year. The camel can go ahead and stay over in Dubai. He can stay stateside, rest and recoup with his wife and kids, kick up on the sandy beaches in Miami. And I think that will be just what the doctor ordered for the grade 8 and much needed for the guy. He's been through a lot this season. Let's hope that Ovi can get in some much needed rest. Now, the Capitals will hit the road for their post-game schedule against the Penguins, followed by a home game against the Edmonton Oilers. So the Penguins, you take a look at it, not the season that they had hoped for. You know, there's been some glimmer there with them, some signs of life from here and there, but all things considered, this is just not their season. If we take a look at the Pens, and I take a look at the Capitals, and I kind of, laugh internally because it's the Penguins, ha, ha, ha. In any event, I'm going to be a professional here. The Capitals in first place. The Penguins are in 14th place in the Eastern Conference. How's it going down there, guys? It's nice up here. But in any event, that is what the Capitals have on deck for the remainder of the season, or shall I say, once they make the return. Center Dylan Strome shared his mixed feelings about the situation. While he believes many teammates deserve recognition, he also noted that the break is an excellent opportunity for the team to recharge and get ready for the final stretch. It's a good attitude. And at the end of the day, I would take the break. And I'm saying the Four Nations is in replacement of the All-Star game, and I like it on paper, except the decision-making part of it. But at the end of the day, it's if it's a skills competition, an All-Star game, or the Pro Bowl, or whatever you want to call it, in all these different sports, at the end of the day, they kind of mail it in. For the Four Nations, I expect them to exert more energy and passion into these games than they would for the All-Star game. But at the end of the day, you guys can have it. But the coach's focus, as we had the last game today, head coach Spencer Carberry is focused on mental preparation for the rest of the season. That's what he's working on, getting right mentally. I would imagine that Spencer Carberry is also going to relish the time, spending it at home with his family as well. It's tough on those coaches. You take a look at it. Spencer Carberry is a very intense individual that I think it's good for him and his staff to get in some rest as well. Now, unlike the usual All-Star break that lasts 4 to 5 days, this extended time away from the ice allows players to step back from the demands of the game. Now, Carberry believes that this will provide the team a chance to reset mentally and physically, like I said, returned refreshed for the season's final push. The only thing I would be wary of a little bit is the rust that surrounds a team that's going to have this much time off, but it's going to be the same thing for all the teams in the NHL. Some teams are going to have more players involved than others, but in any event, a good chance for this team to rest up. I mean, they've accomplished a lot already this season that I think it is a good thing that is coming along at just the right time. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about Alex Ovechkin and his many milestones that he's already accomplished this season that, we know he's here this season, next season, and that could be all she wrote for the grade 8. Let's marvel at the greatness that is the grade 8 straight ahead. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored job puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. And if you are involved in the hiring, if you are involved in the firing, then take the headache away of all of it. You need Indeed. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Capitals podcasts. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this next segment here, we are talking about the breakout season for Alex Ovechkin. Breakout at 39 years old. Well, let's just say a return to form and then some. Let's just go ahead and characterize it as that for Alex Ovechkin, as he is 39 years old and shows no signs of slowing down. What if he's scoring goals or if he's getting an assist hat trick in a game, he is aging like a fine wine. It's almost unfortunate in a lot of ways that it is only just this season and next season under contract, but I do not think he will go down the same road as Jaromir Jagr and play into his 50s. At the end of the day, let the guy rest. He's accomplished enough. But let's not fast forward too much. Let's concentrate on the here and now and what he has done lately for the Capitals. We'll talk about the incredible performance of Alex Ovechkin, who continues to live up to the nickname of the Great Eight. In the recent game today against Utah, even though Ovi's 4-game goal streak came to an end, he made a significant impact on the ice, racking up 3 points. 3 points, 3 assists in the game, a huge game for Alex Ovechkin. Definitely got the Capitals back into the fight. In a lot of ways, I don't think they wouldn't have made it to overtime or the shootout had it not been for Ovi. Now, with this performance, he has officially reached 1,591st point of his NHL career, putting him at 11th on the all-time scoring list. Now, milestones, as I've talked about, the ones that he's knocking out between here and the end of the season. Ovechkin hit the milestone with a secondary assist on PLD's power play late in the first period, marking his 15th assist of the season. Like I talked about in the first segment, surpassing Phil Esposito as he inches closer to Joe Sakic for the 10th spot with 1,641 total points. And we can just take a moment to appreciate this assist was also his 712th of his career. Quite an accomplishment for the Great Eight. And, it's interesting that he has accomplished a lot of things in his NHL career. And some people throughout his career, even looking back to the beginning of last season, and I was a little bit critical to start the season, that any dips, any dives in his production, he has been seen as washed. The bar has been set so high for Ovechkin that if he doesn't reach that bar all the time, it's seen as a failure. I remember under the Bruce Boudreau era that they were calling him fat, that he's all tubby and he can't play anymore. He's had to deal with a lot of criticism throughout his career, even though he has achieved many great things. With that bar being set so high, sometimes even the Great Eight has a hard time achieving that. But this season, I think that he was just in the right mental state, that he told himself, I'm not going to go through what I went through last season. I'm going to hit the ground running, and that is why we're seeing greatness. And head coach Spencer Carberry as well, he sings his praises as he gets to see him game in, game out, practice in, practice out, emphasizing how crucial his playmaking is. He says, quote, he makes 2 big plays to set up both goals, unquote. Carberry noted, highlighting the dual threat Ovi poses with shooting and passing. And Ovechkin's goal for the season now, while the latest milestone is impressive, of course, Ovechkin has his eyes set on even a bigger goal this season. Some people say April 10th against the Canes. With 26 goals under his belt for the 24-25 season, he's currently at 879, just 16 away from breaking Gretzky's record. Now, Even with some injuries and setbacks that disrupted the start of his season, Ovechkin still has 27 games left to reach that milestone. And a lot has changed. It's a fluid situation from the beginning of the season to the end of the season to just, if I ever watch any of my old shows, just to remember what Ovechkin did and what he accomplished, is the talk was, I even talked as well, is he going to be able to catch and pass Gretzky under his current contract? Well, now it seems like he's going to be able to do it and have a year or a season and change left to really just knock it out of the park. But that's the legacy of Ovechkin. Since being drafted first overall in 2004, Ovechkin has transformed not only the franchise, but also the game itself in Washington. His scoring prowess has earned him numerous accolades, including the Art Ross Trophy during the 07-08 season, along with multiple Hart and Ted Lindsay Awards. And in large part, make no mistake about it, the Capitals are in the position that they're in due in large part to Alex Ovechkin. I know that they carried the flame while he was injured, but make no mistake about it, he is the heart and soul of this team, the heartbeat. They're currently in a great position, sitting on top of the Eastern Conference and just ready, poised to do some great things for the remainder of the season. So as we take a moment to breathe and to just kind of reflect a little bit on not the first half of the season, but, another milestone, shall we say, in the season. The Capitals are sitting in a good position before they embrace on the remainder of the season. As a Capitals fan, as someone that covers this team for you on Locked On, I am very happy with where the Capitals are at. And as you, as Capitals fans, you should be as well. Now, a bit of a programming note, there is not going to be any break in the action. Of course, Locked On Capitals is in season. That means Capitals, Locked On Capitals episodes 5 days a week. So, all right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.